talked about change management, but more specifically, why is change so difficult? And why is organizational change so difficult? And I think when we talk about organizational change, it's very misleading. Because when we think about organizations, we think about entities. But organizations are made of people. And so we really shouldn't be talking about organizational change, we should be talking about people change. And we all know that it's very hard to change people. How many of us are married and we hope that our spouses would change after we married them? How many of those spouses change?
What about yourself?
So, I was perfect to begin with. So, whenever an organization talks about change and they say, who wants to change? Well, everyone wants change, right? Everyone wants it better, everyone knows what change they want, but when it's changed around and who wants to change, all of a sudden the hands go down. I'm not the problem. Everyone else is the problem. If everyone else behaved like me, we'd have a perfect organization. And then when you ask who wants to lead the change, you clear the room. Right? No one wants to be the champion of change. And so what's going on? Now, this is why the failure, not what you think. Right? So we're all professionals here. Why the failure? So why does change fail? How many of you have conversations with yourself in your head? Right? It's a very normal thing to do. Now, when we think about our brains and our personalities, we usually refer to that individual that we have a conversation with, right? But what we don't have a conversation with that individual is, I'm going to pick up a cup, I'm going to have a sip. Ooh, that's a little too hot. I think I'll add some sugar. We don't have those conversations. I'll pick up a pen, I'll start writing things down. We don't have those conversations, but we think that that's the person that's in our brain. What's happening in our brain is really there's a lot of automated processes that are happening in the background that we are not even conscientiously aware of. We're not having those conversations of, I don't like this person because, you're just going, I don't like this person. You're not having a conversation, I don't like this new policy, I don't like this new process because, you're just going, I don't like this new process. So what's going on in our brains? Well, our brain is a very lazy organ. It uses a lot of energy, but it's also a very smart organ where it tries to conserve as much energy as possible. And so what it does is it creates shortcuts for us so that we don't have to think. And so it does a bypass so that when we are introduced to something, don't worry about it, don't hurt your head thinking about it, I got this is how you feel about this. And so there's about 100 or so of these automatic programs that are happening in our brains in the background. I'm going to talk about 6 specific ones that really influence change management. So the first one is confirmation bias. Second one is frequency bias. Third one is negativity bias. Fourth one is cognitive ease bias. Fifth one is the IKEA effect bias. And the sixth one is the pseudo-exceptionalism bias. Now, all of these work together in conjunction to make us feel special, smart, and unique. And it's all done in the background where we're not even thinking about it. Okay? So we're going to go through each one. And then after we go through each one, we're going to do 2 things. You're going to do some self-reflection of how those are your biases. And even better, we're going to start judging other people and diagnosing other behaviors of people in our organization that are doing these things. That sounds like fun, right? So, confirmation bias is where we experience what we seek, we find. So, you have a certain set of beliefs. You think this person is mean, this person is nice, this product is good, this product is negative, this policy is good, this policy is bad. And you're always looking for confirmation that you are right. So, let's say you're driving on the street on Deerfoot, you get cut off by a driver, you get angry, you pull up next to the driver, and you see it's a little old lady driving like this, and you go, I knew it. I knew it was an old person that was driving behind that vehicle. You're confirming your biases that old people can't drive. You see another old person that cut you off, and you're going, I knew it, I was correct. However, if it was just a middle-aged individual, you would sort of dismiss it and saying, oh, it must have been just accident, didn't see me, whatever it may be. So we are always seeking information that we are correct. That's why first impressions are so important. When we have a first impression and it's positive, we are always seeking from that individual continuous behavior that we think that the person is good. When we have a negative impression of a person that we first met, that person has to do a lot of good for us to change and shape what we feel about that. Make sense? So we're always looking for confirmation that we're right about our certain beliefs. Frequency bias is sort of two-part, where one part is the more we are exposed to something, the better we feel about it. And so we are frequently exposed to our current processes at work, right? Good or bad, we are comfortable with those processes because we're constantly exposed to them. And so therefore we have a positive feeling. We don't like strange things, we don't like new things. So when a new thing comes in, we automatically don't like it because we haven't been exposed to it long enough. This is where music and radio stations come in. How many of you heard of a song that you didn't like at first, and then after about a week or two, Gangnam Style? Yeah, I can see why people like that song. That's how radio stations work, and that's how artists get sort of recognized. Is when you are constantly exposed to certain stimuli, you start liking them more. And so when something new comes in, you don't like it. Or when you're exposed to something frequently, you think that happens a lot more often than it really does. Right now, we live in the most peaceful period in history. Does it feel that way through social media, through the news and everything like that? But terrorist attacks are actually down from the 1980s. There's been less terrorist attacks and less people dying from terrorist attacks than there has been in the year 2006 to 2016 from the 1980s. But since we are constantly exposed to this in the news media, we think it is the worst time for terrorism. So does that make everyone follow me so far? So the more you're frequently exposed to something, the more you think it's happening, and depending on what that is, the more comfortable you feel with it. Oops. Next one is negativity bias. We are programmed to focus more on negativity than positivity. I can tell you 12 wonderful things about you, but I don't like the way you say and you're going to just focus on whenever you're going to say Okay? So we are biologically programmed, and it kind of makes sense. If something's negative, it hurts us, we don't like it, let's stay away from it. If something is positive, that's good. And so people, when they lack information, do they gravitate towards positivity, or do they gravitate towards negativity? Negativity, right? So when you have a strategy in place and you're not communicating that strategy to your organization, people aren't going, oh gee, this is going to be wonderful. They're going, this is going to be terrible. Okay? So when people don't have information, they skew towards negativity, and we are programmed by nature to always focus on negativity. Cognitive ease. Here are two facts. The Calgary Tower is 190 meters, or the Calgary Tower is 215 meters. Your brain naturally likes and believes whatever is easier to process. So the simpler your message is, the easier your message is communicated, the more likely it is accepted, and the more likely it is believed. When something is very difficult to understand, our brains don't like it, and we automatically dislike it, and we automatically think that it's dishonest, not right. So if you are able to communicate a message clearly and simply, it will be more likely to be believed, and will be more likely to be accepted. The IKEA effect. Okay? We hold dear whatever we create, no matter how bad it is. Okay? So if you created a policy, a procedure, a program in your organization, you will die on that hill protecting your baby. Okay? You created it, it's yours, and you hold higher value to whatever you create and you are a part of. Okay? And that's how IKEA has it. IKEA furniture isn't great, but you built that table. You built that drawer. Doesn't matter that it's crooked, that it squeaks, and that it can fall over and hurt little babies. You created it, right? And so when we create something in our organization, we hold disproportionate value to that policy, procedure, and that program, and we're less inclined to have other people criticize it. It's like criticizing your child, right? If somebody says your child's not behaving correctly, who's at fault, your child or that person criticizing you? It's that person's problem, not your child's problem. And pseudo-exceptionalism bias. If we had a thought experiment and we were able to somehow assess everyone's ability on intelligence, problem solving, creativity, and we all had a number, right, from 0 to 100, and we found out the average, how many of you feel that you would be below the average curve? Hands up. You would be less than average. Statistically speaking, 18 of you should be raising your hands.
We're not that hard.
We all think we are smarter, better, we are undervalued, underpaid, underappreciated, underrecognized. We are a special, unique snowflake that no one truly understands. And so this is healthy. This is healthy for confidence. And a healthy person has needs that to sort of function in daily lives. But this is where sort of self-reflection or sort of like in performance management, when you give somebody a performance review to do themselves, you're sort of checking whether that's really skewed, how wonderful they think they are, or if it's sort of in line where you think that they are. But most people think they are smarter, better than everyone else. Okay? So all of these things work against change management. Okay? Because change management is new, change is hard, change is difficult, change is complicated. Okay? And so these are the kinds of personal biases individuals go on a day-to-day basis that really make it a big struggle in order for us to change. So what I'd like us to do right now on the table, at the tables, is under page 2, page 4 and 5 and 6. I want you to take a moment and think about a confirmation bias that you have. It's going to take a little bit. So what is something that you are always seeking in other people that you find that you're always confirming? Okay? So do people always lie to you? Like it might be a certain individual, but something that you yourself, after I'm going through these things that you're like, hey, I do that. Okay, I didn't realize I did that, but now I do that. And then the funner part is a coworker, a client, something that you've seen that behavior of a cognitive or confirmation bias, other people demonstrate. Does that make sense so far? All right, so you're looking internally of what are some of the confirmation biases that you have, one of them, and then something externally that you've seen other people show confirmation bias towards. And you can't use the driving one. The frequency bias. Okay. Then I want you to do internally, and it's a little bit hard. It's always easier, because we're special snowflakes, to judge others about these biases than it is for ourselves. So something that you've been exposed to a lot, and you think is good, but it might not be so good. You just think it's good because you've been exposed to it so many times, And then vice versa. Where do you think that other people have a sort of a discrepancy of thinking something is very good just because they've been exposed to it or they've done it so many times? This is where it's difficult for instructors who've taught courses for 25 years to let go of old ideas because they've taught it for 25 years. Or career counselors who've never actually had to look for work, but they've been doing career counseling for 25 years. And they still think a functional resume is a good way to go. Then negativity bias. Internally, you're going to look at, okay, so what are some things that I negatively think go to first, right? And then a coworker or somebody outside that you always know that they're going towards that negative spot first. Cognitive ease. So something that you like because it's simply explained to you, and vice versa. IKEA bias. What is something that you built yourself that you're very proud of and you don't think needs any fixing? And something that you've seen others build. They're very protective of that. And lastly, what special skill do you think that you possess that makes you a unique snowflake? And then what skills have you seen others tout and say, this makes me a specially unique snowflake? So what I want you to do is take some time to do that self-reflection, and then once you're done, share it amongst your table, and then we'll go into the big group of sort of sharing our cognitive biases, frequency biases, and that sort of thing. So go ahead. Done. So now if you want to take a moment to sort of go around the table and sort of share some of your experiences or insights with the group. Like within your own table group. Say about workplace behavior, process, and systems. What percentage of that is just habitual? Not a lot of thought. This is just the way we do it. This is the way we've always done it. It's easy. I don't have to learn it. I already know. That would like to share a habit that they would like to change in their organization. Thank you.
The time it takes for volunteers to respond to emails.
The time it takes volunteers to respond to email. Okay. And so what is your expectation of responding for a volunteer to respond to email?
2 business days.
2 business days. That's fair. And what is the usual time?
A week.
A week. Okay. Anyone else? Yes.
Our staff encourage our customers to shop on days when merchandise is on sale, instead of talking about the good quality and value that you can get every day.
Okay. So they focus on the lowest, best price versus quality of the product?
No, they create a situation where the organization will raise less revenues through sales by encouraging people to shop on days when the price will be reduced.
Got it.
So it's a habit that's been.
I'm glad you used habit, right? So one of the things, as soon as we start in our organization talking about habits, rather than behavior or processes or policies, it becomes a very different conversation. Because everyone understands how difficult habits are to change, but people don't understand how difficult it is for policies and procedures to change. So if I go, why are policies and procedures so difficult to change? People go, I don't know, it should be quite easy. You send out an email and it should be done. But as soon as you change that wording to habit, it's a whole different conversation. So I really encourage when you're discussing processes within your organization to refer to these processes as organizational habits rather than organizational policies and procedures. So there's a couple things within motivation that needs to occur in order for people to embrace change and to embrace these new habits. First one is SWIFT, so what's in it for them, right? No one's going to change if they don't see any benefit for them. Fair enough? Why would you change when there's nothing in it for you? For the sake of just changing? And the other one, and this is critical, is the belief that change is good and desirable. If your organization feels that this is a trend,
if your organization feels that this is not a good thing, or employees think this is not a good change, it's going to fail. And so it's critical in your role to have that belief that this is a positive, good thing in the long run. And you can only do that through communication and education. Have you heard of A, B, and C players before? Okay. Well, what do you think is better, an A player or a C player? A players. So this is a trend that's occurring right now in HR, is referring to employees as C players, B players, and A players. The interesting thing about motivation and C, B, and A players is they share something. C players, the people that are worse in your organization, see themselves as victims of circumstance. Nothing's their fault, everything's thrown upon them, they have no control about what they do, what they say, how do they do their job, what the processes are. They're a victim of circumstance. A players have a very different mentality. I control my behavior, I control my actions, I control my responsibilities, I'm in charge of me. These people are naturally self-motivated. These people are inherently demotivated. So any new change that you're bringing upon them is a victim of circumstance, of another thing that I have to do, that I don't understand why, I just have to do it because I'm told to do it. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to move these B players over to the side of having motivation and control over their actions, and you're trying to get these C players to sort of move into that one, that they understand that they do have control and they have a say and feedback. However, if your organization doesn't allow for feedback, consultation, input from these individuals, they will be fighting the change, right? Because of the IKEA effect. When I have input into a process, I'm part of building that process. Therefore, I'm more likely dedicated to that process, and I will defend that process rather than some processes given to me in order to defend. Does that make sense? So, I'm running out of time, but I'm just going to sort of focus on...
That's all right.
I'm okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so when somebody comes, I'll share this because it took me like 3 hours to make this animation. So
it's like an IKEA.
yeah, this is the best animation ever. So when somebody comes up to you and says, you know, there should be something new that we should do. There's this thing called a wheel, and it rolls, makes things a lot easier. And what do you say? I don't have time. I'm too busy currently doing the things that I'm doing right now. I don't have time to look at this new technology, this new process. I'm way too busy. 20-80 rule. Has anyone heard of the 20-80 rule? So the 20-80 rule is a big thing in sort of productivity. 80% of your funding comes for 20% of your donors. Okay? Or 20% or 80% of your profits of your organization come for 20% of activities or products. In your wardrobe, 80% of the clothes that you wear make up 20% of your wardrobe. Everything else is accumulating dust, and you have nothing to wear because you're only wearing 20% of your wardrobe. 80% of your issues in your organization are caused by 20% of your employees, your C players. Right? These are they are a small number of employees that are sucking a lot of resources out from your organization trying to deal with them. So we have very few vital tasks, and we have a whole bunch of trivial tasks that we do on a daily basis. You as an individual need to figure out what your critical tasks are on a daily basis and what the critical tasks are for the change management, because there's going to be only 3 to 5 critical things that you need to do in order to be successful. But what we tend to do is when we focus on, that 20%, results in 80% of the results. But what we tend to do is we tend to play and focus on that 80 other percent that really give us only 20% of the results. And this is where cognitive ease comes in. This stuff is easy to do. It's quick, it's fast, and we focus in here because we get this served done quickly. This is the harder thing to do. We have to actually think about what is the optimum process, procedure, what should we do first, second, not what's the easiest thing to do. And so we tend to play in this area, which results only the 20% of the results. Where we need to, when we're doing change management, what are the critical 2, 3, 4 things that we need to do in order to be successful? But we have a list of 10, 15, 20, and then we don't get the results because those aren't the critical factors that we need to focus on. Okay? So what I'd like you to do right now is on that negative habit of your organization that you picked, think about 2 to 3 critical things that you need to do or try to do in order to get change in your organization for it. So what's a critical thing? Not a list of 10, not a list of 20. What do you think the most important changes, behaviors, processes, items that you think you need to do in your organization to start moving it forward? And remember that change is not going to happen in a day, in a week. It's going to take months, sometimes years, for change to occur. Okay? So that negative behavior or that negative habit, what are 2 or 3 things you can start doing in order to try to move it towards a positive habit? Go ahead. Okay. This was sort of talked about at the beginning. Communication is the key. We tend to feel that we just need to send out a single message, a single process, a single email, a single checklist, and then things are done. And I hope now I've convinced you that that's not the reality of it. When we try to get buy-in from executives, higher end owners, whatever your higher ups are in your organization, they understand only 3 things, truly. And you need to speak their language in order to try to convince them about your organizational change that you want to champion. They understand efficiency, proficiency, profitability, money. So how is this going to increase funding? How is this going to increase productivity? How is this going to increase efficiency? The law, we have to do this because otherwise you will go to jail, or I will go to jail, or somebody is going to go to jail or be fined, and no one wants to be fined. Or 3, this aligns with our strategic goals, with our organizational goals. It's in alignment with the way the organization wants to go forward, right? Because executives are big on goals and business plans and strategies and that sort of thing. So when you are able to frame it in that specific way, how it's going to increase profitability, efficiency, how it's going to keep us in line and not fined or in jail, or how it's aligned with business strategies, they are much more to buy into the organizational change. If you're trying to do it, we should do this because it's going to make my job easier, chances are you're going to fail at having that change in your organization. But how it's going to make your job easier and take that next step of how it's going to gain profitability, efficiency within the organization, you have a much greater chance of doing that. So, the problem is, do executives like being told what to do? No, they're a special snowflake. Right? They are smarter, more educated, more experienced than everyone else in the organization, and they know what to do. Right? So you telling the executives what they should do in the change is guaranteed to fail. What you need to do is frame it in the educational portion of providing the background, planting the seed for them to make the decision that that change is good for the organization. Okay? Otherwise, if you tell them, this is what we should do, the answer is going to say, we don't have the funds for it, we don't have the resources for it, we don't have the time for it. But if you're able to frame it in an educational perspective of how it's going to increase productivity, sales, return on investment, increase funding, chances are they're going to support you on it. You have to choose which battles you're willing to fight and which battles you're willing to let lie. So, in order for change to be positive in your organization, both the executive team and the employees need to be on the same page. And if they're not on the same page, you are guaranteed to fail. And so, there needs to be an understanding and awareness that change does have to happen in the organization. Okay? Both employees and the executive team understand that something needs to change. Okay? If one or the other says things are fine, it's not going to change, right? Because there's a misalignment of awareness between the two teams. There's a desire. Both want the change to occur. Both have the knowledge of how that change is going to occur. The problem is some of us know that things need to change. We just don't know how. Right? We have no idea of how that change is supposed to. We just know that we don't like what's going on right now. Do people in your organization have the ability to champion that change? Do they have the skills, the attributes for that change? And how are you going to reinforce and sustain that change? Because you can work all year implementing a change, and when you let it go, what's going to happen? People are going to revert to their old habits, right? It needs to be consistent and sustainable and reinforced continuously. So now what I would like you to do is go on page 16. If you haven't already scribbled, cut a line in half, put employees and executives on one side, and just go through a checklist to see if there's alignment in your organization for the change that you want to see in your organization. So are the executives and the employees aware that things need to change? Right? If one is a yes and one is a no, you have a problem. Right? Is there a desire for both sides to change? Is there knowledge on both sides to change? Do you have the ability, the skills for each side to change? And do you have a plan in place to reinforce and have that change sustainable? Okay. And if you don't, think about what kind of strategy you could put in place to either educate or work towards both sides having a yes on either side of that equation. Okay, go ahead.
I have to go and I have an appointment at noon. But if you go upstairs, there'll be somebody there.
Okay.
Yeah.
What floor?
9.
9, okay. All right. So after looking at this, do you have a lot of work to do? Right? It's not that simple, right? So it should be that simple, but once you look at this checklist of, okay, I need to bring awareness to both sides of this change. And the problem is, if one side doesn't know that there's change, it's your responsibility to start educating those individuals of why that change needs to happen, okay? How are you going to educate desire? How are you going to get people to have desire for the change? It starts with an S and a W and a double I. Swift. So what's in it for them? What benefit is it for them? What will they gain from this change? and the gain from the change is nothing, you have a hard road to overcome. That's where beating with a stick until morale improves is your only option, right? You need to show them the benefits of that change. Do you and your team have the ability and the knowledge to implement that change? Or do you just want change? So if you just want change, you don't know how to have that change come about, or the strategies for that change, the change is never going to happen. And how are you going to get those skills? What's your plan to get those skills in order for you to be able to take change management to the next level in your organization? And how are you going to reinforce? An email once a week? Informational sessions? Workshops? Is it going to be in your orientations? Is it going to be in your recruitment and selection strategy? How are you going to reinforce and sustain that change in your organization? Sometimes it requires letting old employees that have been in that organization for a very long time, like 25 years, and they created a lot of the processes, that they are the ones that are stopping the change from occurring, and those are very difficult decisions to make. But when there are a number of key individuals that are stopping from change happening, because that's the way we've done it for the last 15, 20, 30 years, you need to have a strategy in place of, are you able to educate that individual of the desire to change? Do you have the ability to do that? Do you have the knowledge on how to do that? And so the case study that I put in here was only a filler in case we ran out of time. We didn't run out of time, so we're all good. So the last portion of it is, so the executive portion, sorry, let's do it this way. So this is on both sides, right? You need to create a strategy where it meets the 5 areas on both sides in order for you to move towards change. How you get input from the executives is you tell them about how it's going to increase productivity, efficiencies or profits, legal compliance, or aligning with business and strategic goals. But how you get employees to bite in on this change? You go in, what's in it for them, right? What is that carrot that's going to make them change? I personally believe that change should start departmental, and then you build outwards rather than trying to blanket an entire change. And the reason for that is you now have a case study of successful change, right? This department changed this process. They become more efficient, more productive. They're happier, more motivated. Volunteers are reporting back in 2 days. Start small. A lot of us are overwhelmed, or we try to change an entire organization with one process. When you do it departmentally, they become your champions of change. So what department, go back to your sort of nugget of what you want to see change in your organization. What department can you focus on to start doing that change? Not organizationally, but specifically a single department. And that's going to be a lot easier because it's less people, it's less complicated, and you're going to have a case study of success if it's successful. And if it's not, well, you just didn't waste the entire organizational time with a failed project, only a department. You need employees' participation. You need employees' feedback. You need that IKEA effect, that they're part of the building process of that change. So they will be more involved and they will protect that change more because they were part of building that change. Feedback, we talked about. You need a soak-in period. You can't constantly be bombarding people with change. People are going to get tired. They're going to get fatigued. You need people to have a soak-in period and do baby steps in order for that change to occur slowly. And I honestly mean this, that you plan for change to take place over a course of a year. Right? This isn't a change of, okay, we're going to implement this policy, and within next week, the whole organization is going to be beating the same drum. You should have a plan that takes about a year in order for that process to, and it seems funny that it's going to take me a year for people to get back to me in 2 days. Yes, it's going to take a year because behavior and habits take a really long time to change. And celebrate the milestones. People start getting back to you in 3 days, woohoo, right? You have to have specific milestones throughout the year that you can check in to see whether you're on track with that change, right? You need to give constant feedback, and if there's failure in that change, communicate that. Hey, this didn't work, so we're gonna try this. These are the reasons why it didn't work. Rather than, oh, that didn't, let's just never talk about it. Because people are gonna go towards that negative spot, right? So we're not gonna do the case study because I think I've done enough of that. Just what I'm going to talk about here quickly is we changed one of our departments from a strictly commission-based salary to sort of maintaining old customers to trying to find new business. And it took almost a year for the change to occur. And it was sort of done incrementally. So what we had salesmen that their responsibility was to have 50 customers that they had to maintain and grow business from them. The problem is what happens in a recession? People don't have money to spend. So we had to change our strategy that what we wanted to do is we no longer wanted to sell in front of the customers, but we just wanted to be in the presence of the customers, popping in to be sort of that frequency bias where we're going to go visit the customer once a month. They don't have to buy anything from us. The employees don't have to be stressed about the customer not buying anything from them, because what we want to do is when things lift up again, for them to be familiar with us because we were there visiting them and now they're ready to buy. So what ended up happening is on September 1st, we let the department know change is coming. We don't know what it is yet, but just so you know, we're looking at the departmental change. Everyone's job is safe. There's no massive layoffs, but change is coming. Wait for a little bit more. And of course, everyone to the negative, they're trying to get rid of us. We're going to get packages, even though we said they're not. On January 1st, we gave official notice of what the changes are going to be. Okay? What we also did was we had during that period, we had employees input about the roles, the responsibilities, and how we're going to measure performance. We had multiple meetings sitting in and saying, okay, what's going to be successful, what's not going to be successful, what are we going to count as a new customer? Is a new customer somebody we haven't visited for a year? Is it somebody we haven't visited for 6 months? Is it somebody who's never bought from us? So we had these conversations, and the employees were part of the responsibilities, the duties, and the metrics of how we were going to measure change. Then, during this time, we also created a new contract because we didn't want to be liable for constructive dismissal. Right? When you fundamentally change somebody's role and responsibilities, you can be sued for constructive dismissal. So we created new contracts and we gave them an option of 3 months saying, here's the new contract, here's the change that is going to happen. You can accept this new contract, or you can quit after the 3rd month because after 3 months because you no longer have a job because that position is terminated. What happens with constructive dismissal is you can only win constructive dismissal when your role is fundamentally changed and you don't accept it and you leave right away. If you try your new role for 3 or 6 months and then quit, it's very difficult to win a constructive dismissal case because you were part of the change, you accepted the change, you tried the change. Right? So this is where it's very important to create a new contract, give people an option to leave if they don't like it, because you've now given them enough notice. This is why it's going to take a year for really serious critical things to change, because you need to give people a soak-in period to realize that that change is happening, what options they have, creating that new contract, those new responsibilities, meetings. It's going to take time. And it's not going to be done in isolation. It's going to be done with group participation. April 1st, the new roles were implemented, and we gave a 3-month buffer that we said, you know what, we're not going to measure any metrics. We're going to see how things are going to go, how many people you're visiting, what kind of interactions you're having. You're going to come, and we're going to meet on a monthly basis, and we're going to tweak the system. And it wasn't until July 1st that the change officially occurred. But usually what ends up happening is an organization starts with this. These are the changes. This is what's going to happen. These are your new roles. You don't like it, get out. Right? So your plan is going to take a very long time to implement because people need a soak-in period. It takes time to change behavior, expectations, and hopefully you've seen through the biases and the habits that it's a big challenge. It's not as simple. Okay? Because if it was simple, everyone would do it. Thank you.